Welcome to the Shifting Our Schools podcast, where we believe learning never stops. We create innovative and flexible professional development opportunities that support the current research and thinking in education today. This week's podcast episode aspires to set you up to take another step forward on your personal learning journey. Now here's your host, Jeff Udick.
Welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. Thank you for finding some time to tune in this week. As you know, all March long, we are focused on instructional coaching as we open registration for our Google Certified Coaching Cohort that will begin in September. We are one of just a handful of Google partners who are also Google Certified Coaching partners, allowing us to run programs to receive your Google Certified Coaching certificate. Our program is run by Heather Dowd, who was involved in the initial research that brought this program to Google. You can hear more from Heather and how this program came to be in episode 158. I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes as well. In today's episode, we catch up with this year's cohort, who for the past 7 months have been on a learning journey with Heather. More from them in just a bit. Before we get to that conversation, I want to thank our show sponsor, Teacher Wit. This open and free online community of educators is a great place to network, learn, and share ideas with others around the world. Not only does the Teacher Wit community have Facebook-like groups, Twitter-like discussions, private and group chats, it also is hosting free exclusive live events, which I'm honored to be a part of. On March 29th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, that's UTC-7, I'll be talking about the value of connections in learning and how it is our job as educators teaching in 2022 that if we can't take our students into the world, then we must bring the world to our students. So search for Teacher Wit in your app store, sign up, and join this growing community of educators sharing our knowledge together. Thank you to Teacher Wit for being a sponsor of the Shifting Our Schools podcast. Teacher Wit, creating and inspiring communities of educators. Also, I'm proud to promote the upcoming Learning to Asia conference, a conference that I helped to get started back in 2007 and still sit on the board of today. This year's virtual conference will be held on April 23rd from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. China time. That's UTC +8. Here's Tricia Friedman to tell you more.
Learning to Asia returns on the 23rd of April. You'll be able to connect with incredible educators as well as learn directly from students. At Learning to, we take student agency and leadership to heart. That's why we're not just talking about students, but we have them at the center of our event. When you head over to learningtoasia.org, you can learn all about our lineup and go ahead and register. Registration will be closing soon as cohorts are filling up and space is limited. So head over to learningtoasia.org today to learn more.
All right. I'm excited to bring you this instructional coaching panel discussion with this year's Google Certified Coaching Cohort as we discuss the state of instructional coaching today, how their districts view instructional coaches, and their reflection on learning in a cohort. I hope you enjoy this panel conversation with instructional coaches, and with that, on with the show. All right, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. I'm so excited to have a panel of instructional coaches here, some instructional coaches who've been going through the Google Certified certificate program through Shifting Schools, and their mentor coach, Heather Dowd, is here with us as well. So it'll be great to just get some perspectives on instructional coaching from different districts, different places, different areas, as we talk about some of the things that instructional coaches are facing today and some of the ways we're trying to pivot within our school district. So let's meet the panel. We'll get started with you, Heather. Good afternoon, Heather. How are you?
Hi, Jeff. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Thanks for having us on. We're very excited to be here. Like Jeff said, my name is Heather Dowd. I just yesterday counted up the number of years I've been an educator, and I kind of shocked myself. But I have now been an educator for 25 years. which feels crazy to me. I started as a high school teacher before moving into an education technology coaching role, and then kind of more into instructional coaching. And now I mentor coaches. So it's been a really fun ride. I love that I've been able to try different things within the field, and coaching, I think, is a way that we can support teachers and really make change.
Awesome. Thank you. Cory, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I'm Cory Cummings. I am an educational technology specialist at an independent elementary school in Seattle. And this is my 9th year in education. I was formerly a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teacher. And so in a new position this year as educational technology specialist. So just really excited to continue to see this position evolve and work with classroom teachers on technology integration. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Cassie, it's so good to see you. It's been a while. It's good to see your face on the screen again, and hopefully in person soon. So that'll be always good.
Yeah. Good to see you too. I'm Cassie Skilproot. I am an instructional technology coach in Sunnyside. I currently support 8 buildings, K-12. I believe this is my 4th year. The last few years are kind of a blur. 4th year in this position.
Awesome. Thank you. Jen, good to see you as always.
Hello, I'm Jen Longmire. Like Cassie, I am a K-12, I don't even know what my real title is, instructional technology, TOSA, support teacher, whatever you want to call me. I support 8 buildings as well in the Enumclaw School District, and just excited to be here and have conversations with all of you.
Awesome. And Jen's other half, Steve.
I was just going to say perfect order. I get to support Jen at least half the time. So my name is Steve Murphy from Enumclaw High School and Enumclaw School District. This is my 24th year in education. I'm also involved in coaching significantly. So this is my 27th year coaching, which is just mind-boggling to me. But I'm a social studies teacher half the time, and then the other half of the time I am working in a position supporting Jen and supporting our K-12 teachers as an instructional technology coach. And I think our big push is to try and move our way towards integrating blended learning as just our way of doing things. So it's not 2 separate things, but it's just the way that we're trying to establish our way of teaching in the Enumclaw School District. So excited to be here.
Awesome. And Amy, good to see you.
Amy Truchon. I'm from Burlington, Vermont. I'm a technology integration specialist in the 6 elementary schools and pre-K in the Burlington Public School District. I formerly was a classroom teacher, elementary level teacher, and when the tech integration and coordinator positions began popping up all over the state about 20 years ago, I entered this position and have been in this role, which has taken many, shapes over the years, and I'm looking forward to and hoping in the years to come that this role morphs even more into more of a coaching role.
Yeah. And I love that, Amy. I think that's a good segue into kind of our first question that, instructional coaching has been around for a long time. It's not something new that schools have been doing. There's been a lot of research out there on it. And, we know that many instructional coaches were pulled in all sorts of different directions over the past 2 years. And as schools we're starting to get back to, I hate to use the word normal, but something that kind of looks like what it was in a pre-pandemic world. How are you finding ways to pivot back to being a true instructional coach, and maybe even go into what were some of the things that maybe different directions you were pulled into, during the pandemic that now you're trying to figure out how you get back to more of that true instructional coaching role?
I have to give our district a lot of credit. Enumclaw did not pull Steve or I in very many directions. They really tried to keep us true to being in our role and being in our jobs. So that's been really nice. The focus, when we were completely out of school, we helped to build a lot of professional development and help teachers along the path of what do we do when we're in all different situations, whether we're in person or online. And then this past year really has been rebuilding relationships, really working hard. We haven't been around each other for 2 years. I can't walk into someone's room without a relationship. So really it's been that foundation piece again. And like I said, our district was amazing and they could have pulled me to sub every single day if they wanted to, and they chose not to. And so I'm really grateful for that.
That's great. I was going to ask you too, because I work closely with Enumclaw and Jen and Steve, and you lost your YouTube channel that had like a ton of how-to videos for your staff. Did you ever get that back?
I did.
Oh, good. Okay.
Took about almost a month, and finally it was a Hail Mary, and I said, take me out of the system and put me back in. And that worked. It
oh my gosh.
Switch.
Okay, good. I was just thinking about that because, I know as coaches, a lot of coaches have YouTube channels and yours disappeared on you. And I remember you being frantic going like, where did all my videos just go for my teacher? So it's great that you got back. Yeah, anyone else? How was your district? How did your district kind of use you, and how are you finding ways to pivot back?
I'm happy to share. So I think for me, it's a unique position where I was utilized as a tech lead in remote learning and over the last 2 years. And my school recognized the importance of a position as a technology coach. And so this was a creation from the last 2 years. And so the recognition for the intentional meaningful purpose of coaching and technology integration and those coaching cycles. And so I really applaud leadership in my school for recognizing how vital that was in helping teachers to rethink what classrooms look like as we return to school. And it's been a really exciting role to be in, to think alongside teachers what that looks like as we take a lot of learning from the last 2 years.
That's great. Cassie, how about you?
I was going to jump in here too and give my district credit as well, because I think the way that we approached it in very similar ways, where our district leadership really valued coaches in our position and how we could lead teachers through whatever we were going through. And so, of course, none of us were experts in distance learning. Like, we all had no idea what we were doing. But our good friend Tyler Raplin and I somehow became the experts just because we were in that instructional tech coach position. And so for us, and for me too, because I support so many buildings, it actually became a really good opportunity for me to build relationships with teachers that I would not normally get to work with, because we were kind of forced into that position.
Right.
So the PD that we led, the office hours that we held and things like that really gave us a chance to get to know teachers. And so when we jumped back in, it felt like a smooth transition for me to start my one-on-one coaching cycles with teachers, because they knew my name, they knew my face, they had learned so much about what we do and what we know. So that actually kind of made it easier to start back in coaching cycles, I feel like, because we had those relationships built.
That's great.
And I'll jump in on something here, just kind of piggyback on Jen and then what also Cory and Cassie just said. But there really is a patience that needs to happen with this as well. Like, if we went through a pandemic time where we were supporting our teachers and supporting what was there, a lot of it was survival. In some ways, I think there's still survival, but we're starting to come out on the other end. And so building those relationships, I think everybody in here has mentioned relationships already, but building those relationships, and that takes time, right? It doesn't happen immediately. And that's something I have to remind myself of, because I want change right away, like immediately to happen. Yeah. But it might be stuff that we're not going to see for a couple of years where it really comes to fruition. And we have this pendulum swing, right, in education that my dad, teaching for 30 years, has always talked to me about. But it goes from one thing to the next, and then we come back to the other, and eventually maybe we kind of get to the middle. So I think we went fully remote and fully online, and then when we came back, people maybe went back to what they knew before, and now you got to kind of find that middle spot of that blended learning. And so I think that's going to take some time. It's not going to happen immediately, like right now. But building those relationships are going to allow it to happen here in the next few years.
Yeah. And I've talked about this with other instructional coaches who have reached out to me as well. As you bring up a great point, Steve, in that, this was an emergency situation and we were stretched. And I always like to use the analogy of a rubber band. Like, we took this rubber band and we stretched it to its breaking point. And some points, for some people, it did break, but we stretched where we could go. And there's always, no matter when you've ever been stretched that far in a crisis, you're trying to get back to normal. You're trying to get back to what feels at least somewhat comfortable. And I think this school year, and we're still in it, this school year has been very much coming back of that rubber band. I've had coaches reach out to me saying like, none of my teachers are using Google Classroom anymore. They're just doing worksheets. They're just doing paper and pencil. They're, well, how did we lose all of this? And I don't think we lost it. I think there's just this natural thing that humans do where we take that thing and we just want to get back to where we can feel centered before we can slowly start stretching it again. So you bring up a good point, Steve. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 years, I feel, before we start getting this thing going again, where teachers are gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember I have that tool. I remember that tool set. I remember that you can do, but we're still in this, like trying to figure out where that goes. And depending on your school district and how long you were distanced, depend on how fast you can start stretching that rubber band again. Amy, did you want to say anything on this?
Well, I was just going to add that our district just started with the instructional coaching model maybe about 3 years ago, maybe 4, but it's only been in the past year or so that we've had instructional coaches in each of the buildings, K through 12. And I feel like the instructional coaching model is just kind of picking up speed. This is the first year last month when the budget passed, or earlier this month, that the instructional coaching role wasn't up on the chopping block.
Oh, great.
And so that's a good sign. We're still at the place where technology integration specialists are not seen as instructional coaches. But our role now is one that is supervised by the Department of Instruction and Learning, the curriculum department. So hoping that, in the near future that we can work more closely with instructional coaches to have a better, collaboration and use some of the same, models and strategies and pedagogy.
Yeah. Who were you reporting to before you got moved under teaching and learning?
We used to have a director of technology.
Okay.
That our district no longer has. And so then we were shifted. So in some ways, that's a really, positive shift because we wanted to be working more closely with the curriculum department. Yeah.
I remember when we made that shift when I was an instructional coach, and it was just like one of those where you're just like, oh, finally, you're right. We should be more on the teaching and learning end and less on the technology end. So it's always great when you can start seeing those. And congratulations for not having coaching on the chopping block. It still is in a lot of places, whenever you're renegotiating and depending on funding, coaches are usually one of those first things that gets cut. That just says a lot for your district that they're saying, okay, this is a regular thing. We're going to make this happen. How about everyone else? Cory, I'll start with you. Who do you report to in your role? Are you under teaching and learning? Are you under IT or kind of a combination? How's it look at your district?
Yeah, I'm under teaching and learning. I report to the associate head of school. And so we do have weekly check-ins that we meet about just kind of what's going on in the school, some coaching conversations I've had, upcoming units of study that might be ways to leverage some conversation and curriculum development. But then there is a separate branch that I kind of work in alignment with our technology manager. And so I do find, especially in a newly developed position, as I lay the foundation for technology coaching, I do feel the pull towards IT troubleshooting, tech support. Right. And we've talked about that quite a bit in our cohort. And for me, it's finding that balance of there are ways to really leverage coaching conversations from stepping into the classroom and supporting, but how to navigate that in a way that is going to lead to those really meaningful connections. And so, but those weekly check-ins that I have with my associate head of school are really great ways to kind of realign some of that navigation and then give some great coaching feedback on how to continue those conversations.
That's great. That's great. Cassie, how about you? Who do you report to? What's yours look like?
So I'm in teaching and learning too. So my direct supervisor is our director of curriculum instruction and assessment. So one of his gardens is just instructional technology in general. So we have something similar where we have weekly formal check-ins where we have our kind of recurring topics that we discuss. Him and I are also kind of the kind of a nice bridge between teaching and learning and tech department. So we're kind of the communication go-to in between everyone, which is nice because we get those relationships on both sides and we can have good communication about if it's this type of question, it goes to tech department. If it's this type of question, it comes to us. And then I get to work also really closely with all of our instructional coaches in each building and their building principals. And so I feel like we have a pretty good line of communication all over the district, which makes it a little bit easier that there's only one of me for 8 buildings.
Sure.
But yeah, that's kind of my role in a nutshell.
Yeah. Steve, Jen, how about you guys? I know you guys, there's been some restructuring, I think, over the last couple of years in your district.
Just a little.
Where are you at? Yeah.
Just a little. So we went into remote learning in a pandemic with a new superintendent.
Yeah.
So brand new. That was this first year. And then this last year, our kind of the leader of this whole department that Jen and I work in was our deputy superintendent, director of technology, whatnot, took a different job. And so we had, Jen, how would we describe it? We had about 2 or 3 people that we were under. I mean, we were under, curriculum, we were under technology. We're all kind of just working together. And then it looks like they just announced what next year is going to look like. It looks like things are going to start to solidify and calm down a little bit in terms of how that's set up. But Jen, you got anything to add to that?
No, other than I don't know what's going to look like for sure next year. I think maybe they'll start looking at putting us under that teaching and learning umbrella versus keeping us separate. I mean, we've kind of always been under the tech umbrella. And so I think that there's going to be some shifting there, but not everything has settled out yet, and all the roles have they figured out. So they've got some pretty key people to hire, and then Steve and I'll figure out where we fall in the matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard, especially I think as, tech coaches, there is this line that you kind of walk. And I think like one of my favorite, moments from coaching was my last coaching job at the International School of Bangkok, where we reported to teaching and learning, but our offices were in the tech department. So it was like I was sitting next to the guy that ran the network. So like as tech integrationists, we were understanding what was happening at a tech level, but our reporting and what we were doing was actually being driven through teaching and learning. And so it allowed us to kind of have those two different, we knew when the network went out. So we knew when the emails were going to flood because the guy was sitting next to us versus, not knowing exactly what was going on. So I always find that really interesting. Heather, I want to kind of bring this over to you. You work with a lot of different districts across the country and across the world. Are you seeing a really big shift into especially tech coaches going under teaching and learning? And how are schools or how are you helping schools or supporting schools in trying to make this transition to like, they don't just fix projectors and Wi-Fi, they can do so much more?
Gosh, that's such a great question. I don't think there's a normal yet. Just as if somebody has the word coach in their role, or even maybe they don't even have the word coach in their title, but they're an instructional specialist of some sort, the definition of those roles varies so greatly from school to school. And also, I think how much clarity the school itself has on what that person's role is varies greatly. So I don't even know if there is a huge shift from technology coaches being under the technology department to being under teaching and learning. I think we can't even figure out what we want the role of technology coach to be. The theme that I see across all the conversations that I have with coaches that I work with and administrators is just the need for that role clarity, for having the conversation. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think it depends on the school and what the school wants that role to be. What I always encourage is a conversation between coach and administrator to get that clarity if it's not there. And I know we've talked about it in the cohort as well. Like, what percentage of your job is running trainings versus what percentage of your job is leading coaching cycles, and get, you might not hit that goal of, 30% this,
Sure.
20% this, but have a conversation about it and have something to move towards. That's usually what I try to encourage.
Yeah, I love that, right? Just having the conversation of like, 50% of your time should be doing coaching cycles, 30% of your time is doing after school PD or lunchtime, like whatever those percentages are we clear as administrator or as a district on exactly what those percentages to be? I think that's a great place to start. And I think tech is it's just this, it still has this weird place. Like if you're an instructional math coach, you know where you fall. If you're a literacy coach, you know what your role is. But tech is like, it's all of it. And then it's also like digital citizenship. And it's also like all these other little pieces of curriculum that get thrown on top. And it sits in this kind of weird spot that I think you're right. It's really interesting to see where we still don't have a definition. I'm just excited, like even in like the last 4 or 5 years, that we're actually calling them like tech coaches. Even Jen, you talked about this. You're like, I'm a TOSA integration specialist. And like, I was never called a coach. Like I can't even tell you the million different names I had. We knew we were coaches, but like we were never called coaches. We were all kinds of integration facilitators, technology, something or other. And so that we're even getting to that kind of, we're I think solidifying or hopefully moving in a direction that they're seeing as coaching, I hope is something that continues to happen for sure. That's great. What are some of the things this cohort, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you that are here on the screen have been going through this cohort of the Google Certified Coaching Program with Heather? You're about 7 months in right now. Can you kind of talk about what are some of the things that you've appreciated about going through this cohort model? Some of the things that maybe you've taken away or things that you've seen implemented in your district because of it?
I really appreciated the ability to expand my personal network, my people that I can bounce things off of, have really good conversations. And I think that we've had some incredible conversations because we're a small little cohort, and lots of conversations. I've appreciated the support and just the very foundational pieces of that coaching cycle. And it's been really nice and clear. Here are the steps that you go through. And, we were talking about what is our role in our district. We don't have the title of coach in our district either. So the idea of a coaching cycle is not something that people are comfortable with yet in our district. And so trying to figure out what that looks like in my current role, how can I take the pieces of that and implement it into what I'm doing? It's given me a nice chance to kind of dabble with a couple of the different things and to try some things on without having to make sure that the system completely changes to a coaching system, that we can still use parts of it in what we're doing.
I like that.
Well, I would second that in our district, in that we've always had kind of somewhat of a tech support. We haven't always had a great teacher to technology department relationship, but we do now. So like Jeff, you were talking about sitting next to and knowing what's going on there. It feels good to you, for the most part right now. But as we move forward with this, just the understanding of what it means to be a coach, because we've had a technology support, right? So, I mean, you might call you a coach, but really what you are is you're the troubleshooter of all the things that are happening. And we've had different building representatives that have done that. And they've had multiple different names because I've been in the role for however long. Instructional technology facilitator, I can't remember what they all were, but there's all these different scenarios. And we've recently landed on blended learning leaders, but we've changed that last name to leader because we want them to be a leader in their building to bring about change. So I think that next step for us, like Jen's indicating there, is as things get solidified in our district office, that we may move towards more of this coaching model, but it hasn't really been something that's there in our district. It's been more support. So I think that's the major shift that like Jen and I are hoping to see in our district, is that it starts to shift to people supporting through coaching. And that's one of the great things that Heather's helped lead us through and that we've practiced and such, is what does that model look like? And I think Jen and I both can see it when we're talking to people more now, where you go, okay, this is kind of the steps that would take place to bring about that.
Yeah. Amy, how about you? You've been in a coaching, well, we'll call it a coaching role for many years. How are you seeing things kind of transition at your school and things you've gotten out of this cohort?
Last spring, I actually found out about this cohort. I was running a half marathon. I think I told this to Heather, and I sort of plugged into my weekly long run playlist, which was the Shifting Our Schools podcast. And I think you may have even been speaking with Heather and sort of putting in a plug for these cohorts that were coming up during the next school year, and listening to you all speak and discuss, Heather's sort of transition from, say, a tech integration or tech coach into an instructional coach was just really inspirational. And it just sort of landed on where I feel like our role, my role, and the others in my district that have the same position should be. It just feels, because we all come from the classroom. Our goal is always, working with teachers to employ best practice and, what does this look like and what does this mean for students, and have the students in mind, and sort of have been using this cohort as a way to hopefully transition the tech integration role into more of a tech coach, or because we do have instructional coaches, but it's still a very segregated, set of positions. Yeah. And it's hard for us to just jump in to their role, and they really probably don't really want a whole lot of our role. So trying to take, the best pieces of the instructional coaching model and have that as part of how tech integration provides or can provide a more effective type of professional development for teachers. So I think next steps for our district really are, using some of the Google certified coaching program to provide suggestions for models of what this might look like.
Oh, great!
How our role can morph into that direction.
That's great. I'm just honored that the podcast makes a half marathon playlist. I mean, that made my day right there. I didn't realize. That's great. That's great. Cassie, how about you?
My role has always been kind of unique and different. So when I came into this position 4 years ago, it was new in the district. It was not something that had been established before. We had one instructional technology, part-time coach in one of the buildings, but other than that, no one really knew what that was supposed to mean. And I think I was a facilitator at first and then changed into a coach, one of those things. But that being said, my supervisor and kind of the directors that I work closely with essentially gave me a limitless creativity. So it was really what do you think this should look like? What do you want to do? And I don't think very many coaches get to be asked that question. And so for years, I've got to play around with, tons of different PD models and what I get to try out with teachers all over. And I believe it was last year, and our executive director of teaching and learning asked me, what is the most impactful thing that you do with teachers? And without hesitating, I said one-on-one coaching by far. I didn't have hard data to back that up. You know what I mean? It was just, we know what's impactful with teachers, and because I got to work with teachers in their classrooms. But I think going through this program and being a part of this cohort kind of helped formalize that. So it was kind of what I was doing the last few years have kind of morphed into this structure that I feel really good about. And now I have my pre-surveys and my post-surveys for teachers, and I use Connect Hub, to track my conversations and meetings with teachers. And so I have that data now to say, look how powerful this is. Every now and then I get caught up and I can only work with, 8 to 10 teachers at a time, and it's only one classroom here and there. But I can say now and show that data of look at the impact that this has.
That's great.
Which is nice.
That's awesome. Cory, how about you?
Yeah, to kind of stem off of what Cassie shared, I am in a position that is new this year, as I mentioned, and this cohort is really been beneficial and really instrumental in thinking about the ways that I can lay this foundation, because similar to Cassie, like I have a lot of autonomy in what that looks like, which is really exciting. But what this cohort has really helped to provide, and what this coaching curriculum has helped to provide, is a lot of really great resources and models and frameworks. Specifically, some of the resources around, well, how do you advocate for a coaching role and position with your administration, with your teachers, which really helped to start those initial conversations at the start of the school year as I presented to staff about what my role might look like, and as well as some of the resources through going through coaching cycles and tracking information and sharing kind of some of those conversations with other teachers. All those resources have been really beneficial. And then just the Slack channel that we have, I feel like I get so many great benefits from that, and from just reaching out about a quick question. Or the other day I reached out to Jen, and Jen, thanks again for the resources for our student services. And so it's just been a really great group to connect with.
That's great. And Heather, how about you? You run not only cohorts for Shifting Schools, but I know you're involved in a lot of coaching stuff around the world again. And just your thought on cohorts like this, a year long. I don't know, we can talk about that. Like, is it too long? Is it not long enough? I know it's hard to try and do this, but what are your kind of thoughts going through running this cohort this year?
Well, I think it has just affirmed my belief that having a group of people support you in your journey, whatever that journey is invaluable. I was part of the Dynamic Learning Project pilot, which was the pilot program funded by Google, which led to the Google for Education Certified Coach program. And in that pilot program, similar to this cohort, we worked with groups. I, as a mentor, worked with a group of coaches, and we supported them throughout the year. And when we would regularly ask the coaches to, rank the resources that we were providing them from, most important to least important, having a mentor and having a cohort was always the number one thing over all of the other resources. And yeah, I mean, I feel the same. I learned so much from this group, right? Like getting to meet with the group and getting to hear from everybody's different experiences. Yeah, I mean, I think community, I think Jen said, I don't know who said it, maybe it was you, Jen, but having the community, like having a community of people support you, of, like-minded, and I don't mean we're all alike. I guess I just mean we are all in positions supporting teachers. So we are all in similar positions. And so getting to share the challenges that we face with each other, hearing how other people tackle those challenges. I mean, it's just, yeah, you have to find your people. And especially with the role of coach, often we're the only one in our school, or one of very few, right? And so you have to go outside of your everyday school experience to find people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, like I'm sitting here looking at Cassie nodding her head because I know Cassie's like the one and only in Sunnyside. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's so good. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules and letting me interrupt one of your meetings to record this podcast. I really appreciate it, and look forward to the last couple months. I think there's 2 months left of the program. I think May's the last month. So it's great. And thanks for letting us catch up. Heather, Cory, Cassie, Jen, Steve, and Amy, thank you so much. Appreciate all your work.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Shifting Our Schools. If you found this episode helpful or inspiring, please make sure to subscribe and leave the team a 5-star rating. If you want to learn more about the Shifting Schools team or download our free resources, head over to shiftingschools.com to see what's on offer now. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode to keep rethinking the shifts our schools need.